The Boys, Season 5, Episode 7. Underwhelming. Next to closing episode. Few initial fresh thoughts. Very underwhelming because of a lot of reasons. So much potential, so many threads were open at the beginning of this episode after having good build-up with those one-shots perspectives. Sister Sage failed miserably by not predicting Love intervening in Soldier Boy's decision to hand over the V1 to Homelander, thus making Homelander immortal. Not invincible, which he almost always has been, kind of, because of his ultra strong powers. He's just immortal, which can lead to a psychological shift in priorities, which we had foreseen and can believe in the present day. Other than that, Soldier Boy just goes off, again getting iced by Homelander. It's not a character death. It is just that Homelander has again put Soldier Boy on ice and stored him away in that container where he sometimes frequents, comes out, sometimes for 50 years, sometimes for, I don't know, a year or two. Black Noir, 1 and 2. Done for, without any significant impact on the central storyline of the show. Hughie and Starlight. Well, they used to be clubbed together. Now one of them is a soup and the other one is not, even though Hughie temporarily was one due to Temp V. Their storyline. Both of them are still alive. Starlight is now reverting back to being a hopeful character. MM is also coming back to being a hopeful character without any build up to that. The big revelation at the end of, I think, the One Shots episode was that Starlight grew up by believing Maeve was actually probably right, and MM had become disillusioned from his previous or original mindset. He had been eating well, sleeping well, feeling healthy physically because he had given up on the idea that there was any light at the end of the tunnel. He already considered himself to be a dead man walking, which allowed him to have a sharp focus on what he would have to do for the boys to come out victorious, i.e. removing Homelander and saving the world. Now, all of that takes a very sharp left turn, or you can even say a 180-degree turn, with Starlight again becoming a very hopeful character. By the end of this episode, it began with Starlight asking help from some Gen V characters who showed up in the penultimate episode of The Boys, where Starlight told those help cast members to go away, side characters to go away and stop their vigil. And after all the unfortunate circumstances of this episode, she sought their help again. So that's a 180-degree turn for her. More on MM. He, again, is now hopeful because he said his exterior had become very insensitive because of repeated trauma, and now he's back to being that, and he sees the same thing in Annie, thereby, again, bringing both of them back to their original factory settings. So I'm not sure if this is an earned story arc where you can say that they're back to being themselves over the span of one episode, or whether this is just a horrifically short reversion to what it used to be without enough build-up. More on Hughie. Hughie has been at least consistent. He has often been annoyingly soppy. However, at least the two characters who've been very much consistent throughout the duration of the show's run have been Hughie and Billy Butcher. Billy Butcher's past with the Joe Kessler was again made central to the episode when Synapse, this other character who can read minds apparently, he takes the form of Joe Kessler and narrates to Hughie how Billy Butcher wanted to hold his ground along with his entire crew, which ultimately led to Billy being the only one who walked out alive while the other ones had to die for his cause. Hughie asks Billy whether all of that was true while both of them had been captured by Synapse. Billy says yes, apparently Billy's powers have been hindered by Synapse because Synapse is focusing so much on keeping those powers dormant. Then Synapse engages Hughie in an attempt to make Billy Butcher watch as Synapse murders Hughie. Hughie engages Synapse in some other issues where Synapse's brother apparently died because of something that Synapse did, Huey distracted Synapse long enough for Synapse's hold on Billy Butcher to become weaker, thereby allowing Butcher to gain the upper hand and ultimately end Synapse. So, even though that was nothing really other than a almost dead but not really LOL, other than that, there was nothing really important going on. Again, it is the same trope of the heroes getting captured and somehow not killed, and they make a heroic rescue, or they make a heroic escape by the end. Starlight and MM were also able to survive because of Starlight's powers and the inability of O-Father to convert a bunch of people into 100% dedicated Homelander believers. Some of those people were allowed to leave by O-Father after he, with the Synapse's help or some other mind reader's help, he was able to verify that those people had truly bought into the campaign of making Homelander the second coming of Jesus or God, whichever terminology Homelander prefers. And ultimately, those people were allowed to leave, and the others were murdered. And O-Father is also completely buying into this whole thing, even though he knows that Homelander is probably pushing the envelope a bit too much. In one episode, it is almost impossible to show why Homelander is now going to either die or have his powers removed, how they're going to have Annie and Huey somehow come together and have this happily ever after. I believe that's what they're going for with those two characters in some way, otherwise, what was the point of removing, spoiler alert, Frenchie from the equation? This entire episode, now that I'm coming to it finally, there was one thread that was being explored, Kimiko being the one who is impervious to pain, and Soup who can heal. She would be able to withstand a bunch of radiation, which was how Soldier Boy got his powers, the powers being that with a chest blast he could fry the V from the blood of the Soup, thus removing the powers from the Soup's body, essentially converting them back into being a human being. They were trying to inflict the same power into Kimiko by exposing her to very strong radiations. That was the whole premise of Billy Butcher's backup plan, which to everyone sounded like a long shot, until Frenchie sought the help of Sister Sage, who was having an on-again, off-again relationship with her powers, by virtue of lobotomizing herself with that eye socket device that she uses to not be so smart for a while. And she was also depressed and wallowing in her tears because she did not see the twist of Soldier Boy handing V1 to Homelander last episode. So Frenchie was finally able to get the formula right after having it triple checked by Sister Sage, whose heroic turn is not very, very believable, and hopefully there is some other master plan that Sister Sage has been holding on to. Otherwise, this would be one of the most dumbed down versions of the smartest character on Earth, because the smartest character on Earth cannot be smarter than the writers writing that character. And I hope that there is a more convincing version of a storyline for that character that will somehow reveal itself within the 1 hour that is left of this entire show's run. The Deep has been banned from the Seven, or rather the Seven has been completely obliterated by Homelander because he now sees himself as the only one. Even though this is coming at the heels of Homelander becoming immortal, it is unclear as to why this is the time he saw it, other than, okay, his ego is so big now that he will never die, that he is able to take that step of disbanding the Seven, thereby just relieving the Deep of his entire life's purpose. As he mentioned, it is true that the Deep has been the most loyal, and somehow Homelander, probably due to the Deep's devotion, allowed the Deep to walk away unscathed. Otherwise, Homelander's history with people who are scared of Homelander has been just he lasers them into death, of which the Deep is the only walking exception. However, due to the Deep's decision not to prevent the oil pipeline, he is also public enemy number one of the ocean and all the creatures inside it, which has led to the sea creatures, or, well, water creatures, telling Deep if he ever comes into water, they will kill the Deep in the water, ironically depriving the Deep from his entire kingdom of the ocean. So the Deep is a man without his tribe, kind of a superhero, which he will still remain because he has enhanced strength. However, he is sad after removing Black Noir 2, and he's left without any identity, so to speak. Billy Butcher will probably be able to counter Homelander. Soldier Boy is most likely not going to be around to deprive Homelander of his powers, which was the predicted fix to the situation inflicted by Homelander becoming immortal. I'm not exactly sure the power levels that have been shifted, as I think I mentioned earlier as well, how that affects Homelander's power levels. Hughie and Starlight might be in line for Happily Ever After, because other than that, the other two were going to be Frenchie and Kimiko. Frenchie kept on saying to Kimiko that he reversed his decision of no kids. Basically, he was willing to make the sacrifice of having kids with Kimiko and retire to some place, which is usually the calling card for impending death for a heroic character. Frenchie ultimately died saving Kimiko and Sister Sage when Homelander was able to locate their headquarters, for the lack of a better word, or their haunt, and he encountered only Frenchie, because like Superman cannot see through lead, Homelander cannot see through zinc, and that was the reason why Sister Sage and Kimiko hid inside a lead chamber, preventing them from being discovered by Homelander's X-ray vision, probably. He could see through almost anything. He found Frenchie. Frenchie tried to weaken Homelander with some radiation, ultimately exposing himself to the same radiation, resulting in his death, probably. I'm saying probably, not that there's any doubt regarding Frenchie's death. That is almost 100% true. There is doubt whether that radiation killed Frenchie or some laser blast, even though there was no direct scene showing Homelander lasering Frenchie. Very underwhelming. How are they going to wrap up this entire thing? Very underwhelming. No clue how they're going to wrap up this entire thing in one episode. There have been theaters that have been booked in droves where the finale of The Boys will be airing. Probably, hopefully, a very satisfying last hurrah of the series, even though the signs for that are very, very underwhelming or not very promising at the moment. Eric Kripke has managed to pull off a very satisfying ending in Supernatural Season 5. The only difference was that in that case, the breadcrumbs leading up to Season 5 were very well established. In this case, the one-shots episode, even though slightly filler and kind of unnecessary with Terror's point of view, even though that was cute and probably fitting better in Season 4 or Season 3, it did give us some insight into various characters, that being Soldier Boy, Black Noir, Sister Sage, and Terror, aforementioned. And of course the MVP of that episode, who probably checked out at the best possible time for her character's arc, being Firecracker. So with all of that, the lead up to the finale has been very, very weak. I hope they can pull it off, even though it's essentially impossible to tie up so many open threads. Here's until next week. Hopefully I'll be around to do a review of that too. Till next time, this is Duncan Lievi. Review of The Boys Season 5, Episode 7.